Well, talking of mainstream media, we've been joined now also by Richard Graves. Richard, would you like to identify, your background and why you're here? And then we'll have a chat, maybe the four of us, Danny Nelson, Richard Brennan and myself, about mainstream media and how they tend to cover not only the climate deniers issue, though of course you can talk about that if you wish, but also the whole of the COP, this movement that has brought us to this point.
Hi, thanks for having me here. So I'm the writer for the TCKTCK campaign, which is an unprecedented alliance of NGOs that have gotten together, ranging from both the environmental NGO space, but also to humanitarian, youth, faith, and even media organizations have gotten together to work on this issue. And I actually come out of an online media background myself, having worked with editing itsgettinghotinhere.org, which is the largest youth blog on the internet, which has around 300 writers around the world, as well as working with Link TV as a producer on Link TV's Earth Focus.
So, Richard, what would you say about the way this event, this important occasion, COP15, what do you feel about the mainstream media coverage of this? Because there's been a lot of debate about whether it's been good, bad, indifferent, whether it's been sensationalist or not.
I would say I thought we'd gotten over some of these problems. Really, just 2 years ago, I remember reading on outlet after outlet saying the debate is over, the science of climate change is settled, it's real. Also, we saw coverage that, coming from groups saying, there's actually is an unprecedented amount of public attention and political will coming together at Copenhagen. And yet I've seen a lot of coverage, and I don't necessarily think it's the reporters here, but I've seen a lot of actually editorial sort of engagement where something like this weekend, where 100,000 or close to it marchers, 99 point something percent of them were peaceful, family-friendly event who were excited to be here from all parts of the world, and who were joined in solidarity by 3,200 events around the world, were just written off by a small group of people that tried to hijack the event, and that even the Danish police agreed were trying to hijack the event, and the Danish police said we saved the protest. So it wasn't an issue of protesters versus police. It was a peaceful march that had an incident, and that incident became the headline for many of the newspapers around the world. And so that's...
Well, but why is that? Is that just the commercial interest because they know that this will sell papers? Is that what it's about? I mean, haven't the media industry grown up beyond this?
I think it partly is some sensationalism, but I think it's also page views. To be honest, the media is in a really bad shape right now. People are shuttering their outlets, and people are really trying to generate new revenue online. And generating revenue online is you get it from having people come to your site. And so I think they're finding that certain headlines, even if they're somewhat inaccurate or misrepresenting the entirety of what happened, drive traffic. And that's advertising dollars right there. And in this cash-strapped period, I think people aren't covering it as well as they should. And this is something the Society of Environmental Journalists and other watchdog organizations had said, global warming is an issue where journalists have an ethical obligation to accurately represent this. And they've repeatedly sent missives to some of these organizations, and we're not seeing any improvement. And it's a major problem. Washington Post recently, has repeatedly published op-eds from people that are using information that has been completely debunked. And they claim it goes through their fact-checking process, but it's patently false.
I know, I'm afraid sometimes when people ask us at OneClimate and One World whether we have proper journalistic standards, we say, oh, we wouldn't dream of stooping so low. But because we don't feel we have to sell anything, we accept the truth as far as we can, and getting a range of voices so that we don't feel we have one fundamentalist truth is part of the problem, that people feel that all those of us who do care passionately about climate change, that we have become a kind of fundamentalist single voice. Is that part of the problem? Then people feel a kind of polarization that they have to kick back, they have to find fault almost, because they're offended by our fundamentalism as they see it. I mean, they talk about green activism being a kind of religion. They don't realize what a range of voices and caring there is here, obviously, because we are portrayed in the media as just these weirdos who insist on our new religion.
I would say to that, it's actually an interesting question which I've been speaking with colleagues and people I've met here this week. I think that this process of having this discussion on a global level has created a new, or is about to create a new scientific level of study into the psychology of climate change and how it impacts the scientists themselves, who are so frustrated that their message hasn't been getting through the past 20, 30 years when they've been trying to get this message through the public. And the more they study this problem, the more they're convinced, the more serious this problem becomes. And likewise with journalists, I think that they are stressed out, frankly, by this need, as Richard mentioned, to drive traffic to their sites and keep their jobs, because they're losing funding and losing page views, and certainly in the print media, which Daniel will be able to speak to, it's difficult to sell papers these days unless you have sensational titles, and certainly in the climate change arena, with the skeptics and deniers we talked about earlier, they've created a lot of intriguing headlines which draw people in. But getting back to your question, I think it's unfortunate that we are having a debate at this point over the causes. We should be discussing the solutions.